John Watson, 1878 to 1958. Well, he lived a long life, all right, 80 years old, all right, when he died. And he won. Well, of course, he was the founder of behaviorism. He got his master at the age of 21, got his PhD at University of Chicago. And he worked with white rats, okay? Therefore, you will see that was a lot of his followers also worked with white rats, chief among them Skinner, B.F. Skinner. Right? Now, his PhD thesis is called what? Animal education, okay? The psychical development of the white rat. So that's his PhD thesis, all right? Anyway, in 1913, he was invited to give a series of lectures at Columbia University. And then, well, because of that here, of those lectures, he began to introduce the notion of behaviorism. We are only interested in the in observable data in psychology. Anyway, so he did that. He published a lot, and but then a little side history is that he left his wife for his lover, a graduate student. Okay, so his wife divorced him, so he married his graduate student. But then the University of Johns Hopkins fired him. Okay, that type of thing. But anyway, in 1957, see here, a year before he died. Watson received a gold medal from the American Psychological Association, okay, for his contributions to psychology. Right? So just briefly on John Watson. So let's take a look at the early association theories. What association? Stimulus response. Okay, stimulus response. The SR associations. Okay. Now, Thorndike, a faithful follower of Watson, he instead of working with rat, he worked with cats. So he built the famous puzzle box. Okay, so he conducted numerous what we call puzzle boxes experiment using cat. Okay, for Thorndike, he felt that learning was basically a trial and error enterprise. He paid little attention to the possibility of concept formation or thinking. He was truly behaviorist. All right. The SR associations were learned, according to Thorndike, through trial and error. So that is to say, the learning, according to Thorndike, was rather random, without purpose. And so let's take a look at Thorndike's three major laws of learning. He postulated say the first one, the law of readiness. Okay, law of readiness. When an organism is in a state in which the conditioned units, like the SR connections, stimulus response connections are ready to conduct, then the conduction is satisfying. If the conduction unit is not if not ready to conduct, then conduction is annoying. If we take a look at this law of readiness here, Thorndike was actually speaking of a brief neurological readiness. Of course, he didn't mention this, all right? But then for us, you take a look, because Thorndike and also Skinner never believed in neurological readiness. So let's take a look at the second law. Okay, the law of exercise, okay? Also called the law of use and disuse. So here it says the more a stimulus response connection is used, the stronger it will become. The less it is used, the weaker it will become. So that is to say, practice makes perfect. However, Thorndike believed that practice led to improvement only when it was followed by by feedback or reward. And you see here later on Skinner followed up on this and called this reinforcement, all right? So blind practice with no knowledge of the consequences of the act had no effect on learning. All right? So that is the law, the second law, the law of exercise. Okay. The third one, the law of effect. When an SR stimulus response connections is followed by satisfaction, followed by reward, and of course later on Skinner put down reinforcement. Okay, the connection is strengthened. That SR connection is strengthened. Also, if the connection is followed by annoyance, say punishment, it is weakened. All right? So here, Thorndike actually mentioned motivation of learning. Is that right? Motivation of learning. Of course, he didn't say this, okay? But then we studied this law, and then we know that it is he was actually talking about motivation. Okay. All right. So there is another law later on. Is called law of identical elements. Okay, law of identical elements. The learner is better able to confront new problems if these new problems contain elements similar to those the learner has already mastered. All right, so it is very straightforward, all right? And you will see later on his followers or behaviors, later on they have something called transfer. Okay, positive transfer, negative transfer, that type of thing. Okay, that type of thing. So now Watson at that time he was very interested in the Russian psychologist Ian Pavlov. You must have read about Ian Pavlov's famous experiment, conditioning experiment with using dog. Okay, if you take a look here, the food normally when you present food to the dog, the dog will say you will observe salivation. But then if you just ring a bell and then you observe nothing, okay? If you take a look here, see a thumb look, sometimes look only. However, if say Pavlov paired the third with the sound of the bell, ding, okay, every time. Okay? After a while, okay, no, then that because of the food, okay, the dog was observed to salivate, right? But then after pairing these two items, the food and the bell, after many times, then later on, Pavlov observed that just the bell ding would elicit salivation. So that is to say, what the bell has acquired the property similar to the food. Is that right? Similar to food. So let's take a look at the explanation. Right? So you see here, Pavlov's his work was embraced by Watson. Okay, actually, Pavlov's work became the cornerstone of learning theory according to the behaviors. Now, take a look at the explanation here is that so the meat powder is called unconditioned stimulus. Okay, like unlearned. Okay, it's the dog does not have to learn. Okay, you present food to the dog, salivation. Okay, so presentation of the unconditioned stimulus will elicit unconditioned response, salivation. No prior learning or no experience is needed here. Okay, the UCR, the unconditioned response. However, pairing the 2,000 cycles per second tone ding, okay, paired with the meat powder, okay, will produce salivation. And after pairing the two for a sustained period of time, then the 2,000 hertz or cycle, 2,000 cycles per second tone itself by itself would generate salivation. So at that time, the tone is called a conditioned stimulus, learned. And salivation is called the conditioned response, a learned response. And in a process called stimulus generalization, when the original 2,000 per second tone becomes when it becomes generalized, that is to say 2,200 cycles per second, okay, 2,500 and 1,700, all that here, the dog will you observe or Pavlov could observe salivation. The dog, okay, you observe salivation. So that is to say, this is called stimulus generalization. Okay, so the dog will salivate to different tones. All right, so you see here, in order to obtain the results here, the CS, the conditioned stimulus here, the tone, okay, the bell, okay, would have to be repeatedly presented together with the UCS. The UCS unconditioned stimulus, the dog food. Okay, so therefore, when you pair them enough number of times, then the dog the tone by itself will what produce salivation. That means the dog has learned to respond to what? To the bell, which is a conditioned stimulus. All right? Now, so after pairing for some time here, and the what? The tone elicits salivation. All right? Now, but then what happens if we do this here? Just presented tones, salivation, presented tone, salivation, but after a while, no food, okay, no food. After a while, by what repeatedly presenting the what? The conditioned stimulus, and in this case, it's the tone, without following it with the UCS, unconditioned stimulus third, okay, such that in such a way that what the tone, the CS, okay, loses its power to evoke the CR, the conditioned response, in this case, salivation. All right, so extinction what will occur when we do this here. I look at what here is called what? Classical conditioning in what? Advertisement. Okay, take a look here. In attempting to what? To induce positive emotional responses toward a product or an idea. Advertisers use classical conditioning techniques. They pair their product with an attractive, okay, the product with an attractive, desirable individual or situation to evoke a very pleasant response. Right? For example, there are so many examples, right? Coca-Cola paired with Wayne Gretzky, the great one, okay? And you have lots of lots of celebrities. They are used, okay, to pair with a soap, pair with food, pair with oil of Olay, that type of thing. Okay, you know what I mean. Okay, so that is what the use of classical conditioning in advertising. All right, it's very effective, and it is still what you see this here many times on TV. Okay, on TV, all right, and of course on newspapers, pamphlets, all that. Okay, all that. All right. Now let's take a look at Skinner. Skinner, one of the most influential psychologists on earth. Okay, take a look at Take a look at Skinner's Skinner, the person itself. Okay, he was born in a railroad town in Pennsylvania. Okay, now he was named he was named B.F. Skinner. Okay, he was named Frederick Burroughs Frederick Skinner. So B.F. Skinner. Okay, now that Burroughs was actually his mother's maiden name. Okay, his father was an attorney, good family. Skinner had one younger brother who died young. Okay? So, but anyway, childhood had been happy for Skinner. As an older child, he was fascinated by performing pigeons at a country fair. He showed an inventive interest through various devices when he was young. So that is to say, he could create. Okay? He could actually create. So when Skinner was doing his undergraduate degree in English, yes, in English, okay, in a small New York school, Hamilton College, back in 1926, okay, he submitted 3 short stories to Robert Frost, the famous poet, okay? Robert Frost, and received encouragement from what? From Frost, okay? After he graduated, he drifted for a while. Drifted. So he was a drifter and he was a womanizer. Okay, let me tell you this. Okay, he very much wanted to become a writer, and he even tried to write a novel. But of course, the project failed. And to his parents' delight, he enrolled in the psychology grad program at Harvard. Okay? So he graduated from Harvard. Okay? Anyway, so he was a drifter, even though when he was a grad student, he was spent some time in the famous Greenwich Village, sampling the bohemian lifestyle. All right. And anyway, he met women, and then he lived with one of them, that type of thing. So he was actually a womanizer. He was known to be a womanizer. So it's just some background news about Skinner. All right. As a young man, Skinner was shy but outgoing, cautious but adventurous, intellectual, yet sometimes quite silly. His personal life was rather conservative, but he occasionally violated sexual convention. That type of person. Anyway, Skinner's advanced degrees were both from Harvard, say an MA, and in 1930 he got a PhD. Okay, no, he got his MA in 1930. He got his PhD in 1931, just 1 year. So he was at that time he was 27 years old. Okay, now at Harvard, Skinner encountered important personality theories. I remember Gordon Allport was there. Gordon Allport was famous. Okay, you learn about what is Gordon Allport functional autonomy later in the course. Okay, Gordon Allport joined the faculty at Harvard in time to hear Skinner defend his dissertation, but too late for Skinner to take any courses with Gordon Allport. Now, why I mention this? Because had he done that, had he taken courses from Gordon Allport, he would have he would have to accept personality. Is that right? Say something hidden, something unobservable. You could only infer from observable behavior. So that type of thing. All right. So he was affiliated with the University of Minnesota. Okay, for 9 years, if I remember correctly, during which time he married. Okay, he married, and he had 2 daughters. The younger daughter called Deborah, was raised in a modified crib. Skinner called an air crib, designed to provide an environmentally controlled environment. So Skinner likes the control. SR, stimulus response. He also conducted military research, sponsored by the General Mills, the food company. Said it was rumored that he trained pigeon to drop bombs onto Germany vessel, Germany warships, that type of thing. All right, and Uh, he what? He joined what? He joined what? Harvard in 1947. Okay, and he stayed there. Okay, so Skinner was one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century. Okay, he received many professional awards. After almost 42 years in Harvard, he died of leukemia in 1990. He was what? He was 86. Okay? Now he look at his contributions. He published many papers, and the number of studies that stem directly or indirectly from Skinner's research and ideas is impossible to estimate. There must be thousands, tens of thousands. Okay. Now look at the Journal of the Experimental Analysis of Behavior has been since its founding in 1958 devoted entirely to research in the Skinnerian tradition. So that is what B.F. Skinner. So let's take a look at his learning theory. Okay, now take a look here. He views learning as what? A stimulus response association or response stimulus associations. So that is to say what you will see later on what it is called operant conditioning. Okay, operant conditioning takes place when response is followed by a reinforcing stimulus. Later on, of course, it is called what? A reinforcing stimulus is called what? Reinforcement or a reinforcer, right? So according to Skinner, it is the environment that causes change in behavior. Is not concerned with what goes on inside the organism, okay, or the organism's motivational or emotional state, or even his neurology. So he doesn't believe in all that. Okay? He doesn't believe in all that here. All right. So he borrowed, of course, Thorndike's law of effect and called it what? Reinforcement. Okay, called it reinforcement. Now, take a look at some reinforcement. Positive reinforcement. Any stimulus that, when added to the situation, increases the likelihood that the response will occur. So this is the definition of positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement. Any stimulus that, when removed from the situation, increases the probability that the response will occur. Now, notice the word increase. In the definitions for both positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, we see the word increase. Okay? Even though the name see the adjective negative, okay, negative reinforcement, it's still what points to increasing, okay, the probability of the response, okay. Now we will talk a little bit more about negative reinforcement later on. But then let me give you an example. Removal of an aversive stimulus. That is to say, for example, what is removal? Escape from isolation room. Because let's say a rowdy student was penalized. Okay, you make so much noise in the classroom, so you stay in the isolation room. That is a punishment. Right? So removal of this aversive stimulus, the punishment is called the aversive stimulus. And then when you do that, then the removal acts to strengthen the behavior. Say remaining quiet in the classroom, that type of thing. So negative reinforcement is also associated with increase of of the response. All right. So if you take a look here, learning according to Skinner is that here when the environment impinges on the individual, it seems that the individual is a passive recipient of information, right? But then later on you will see that again here is that that Piaget mentions P-learning, physical learning, which takes place when physical things act on us. Okay, for example, conditioning called it P-learning. Piaget called that P-learning, a physical learning. That is actually what Skinner is talking about. When physical learning takes place when the environment acts on us. Okay, say conditioning. Okay, but then Piaget favors what he calls LM learning, logical mathematical learning. Okay, we will talk a lot about this when we come to discussing IQ. Okay, now so LM learning is the learning that results from our actions on things. Okay, so LM learning is the result of our continuous experiences of organizing and reorganizing our actions as we proceed toward the goal of understanding. Okay, we will see logical mathematical as a very as an important component of IQ. Okay, later on. Okay, anyway, punishment is considered to be an aversive stimulus that reduces the rate it reduces the rate of the response. All right? Now let's take a look at let me reinforce your understanding of negative reinforcement and to distinguish it from punishment. Now, take a look here. Students often confuse negative reinforcement and punishment. So it may help to remember that negative reinforcement is always associated with increases in behavior, while punishment is always involves decreasing or suppressing behavior. All right, so let's take a look at the behavior. Say, pay attention in the classroom. You do that, okay? Pay attention. And if they do, you add candy. So that is a positive reinforcement. So candy serves to increase the behavior. What is the behavior? Paying attention. All right. Now, let's take a look at another situation. You disturb the class, okay? A cold stare from the teacher. So that is punishment, okay? That is punishment. So then it serves to decrease behavior, okay? Now, negative reinforcement, if you take a look at here, okay, is that you put the student in a difficult position. For example, the afternoon retention after school. Okay, you disturb the class. Okay, the punishment will be afternoon retention. Okay, but then here, if you remove afternoon retention, okay, no after class retention, okay, so that therefore you would increase the desired behavior, say paying attention. You don't disturb the class. Okay, so the difference here between positive and negative reinforcement will be in positive reinforcement. You add the reinforcement. In one negative reinforcement, you remove you remove the subject from an aversive situation. Okay, removal of retention. Okay, removal of the punishment. Okay, that type of thing. Removal of punishment. And you serve to increase it serves to increase the desirable behavior, right? So both positive and negative reinforcement, they both serve to increase desirable behaviors. All right, so let's take a look at take a look at two types of responses. Okay, now Skinner differentiate between two types: respondents and operants. Okay, what are respondents? Like what? Pavlov, the reflexes, the dog's salivation, that is to say unlearn the responses, okay, responses that can be automatically triggered by a specific unlearned or unconditioned stimulus. Okay, so remember the food and salivation. Okay, so that is salivation is unlearned responses. Okay, it's called respondent. Okay, for example, our reflexes. Okay, Okay, but Pavlov has shown that respondents can be conditioned. It can also be illustrated by UCS. Okay, and so reflexes like you hit the knee, something below the kneecap, you have a knee jerk. Okay, that is reflex. Okay, one of reflexes. Okay, that type of thing. Okay, or when your eyes see something interesting, for example, when most men, when they see new to women, the eye dilation occurs. Okay, without men knowing it. Okay, so that's a psychological finding. Okay, the rooting reflex for that has survival instinct. If you put the thumb or whatever here to the baby's cheek, the baby would turn and suck. Okay, as soon as say 3 days old. Okay, so that's reflex. We are born with all that here. Okay, blinking of our eyes. You do this, your eyes will blink. Is that right? You do this in front of the eyes will blink. All right. Okay. Operants. What operants? Okay, operants here is the responses emitted, okay, by the organism. Okay, by the organism that are not respondent. So those responses, those behaviors are not reflexes, are not respondent. All right. So an operant is the response that occurs was spontaneously without having to be triggered by a UCS. For example, you raise your hand, that's called an operand. Okay, you shift around in your seat. Okay, that's called an operand because you emit the behavior. You turn around and talk to your classmates sitting at the back, that operands. So operands are emitted by the organism. Okay, the experimenter does not force the response to occur. It's freely emitted behavior. So they are all called operands. All right. All right. So let's take a look at what operand conditioning. Take a look at the sequence of events. Okay, the sequence of events for what operand conditioning. So let's take a look here. Okay. Now, take a look at the sequence. The emitting of free operand. Free operand, the response, okay? Response. Then the presentation of a reinforcing stimulus. That is called reinforcement. Then what we'll see an increase in the probability that the response will occur again. For example, someone, say a student, a student is very shy. Okay, he's shy of talking. He seldom talks. Okay, but then every time he talks, a freely emitted behavior, he is praised. He is given attention. So praise is a reinforcement. Now, the next time this student talks or to give opinion, he is praised. Okay. Now, very soon, emittance of the behavior paired with reinforcement praise. Very soon, when they go together, then Then the student or this student will begin to talk more, right? So that is called operant conditioning. Okay, so now of course for optimal conditioning, the reinforcement of course should immediately follow the response. Okay? All right, so that is to say the student should be reinforced as soon as the appropriate response is emitted. So the law of operant conditioning. Okay, let's take a look at the law of operant conditioning. If the occurrence of the operand is followed by a reinforcing stimulus, the rate of responding for that particular operand will increase. Well, it will increase will increase over the operand level. Operand level, like the rate with which the free operand is typically emitted prior to conditioning. Therefore, in operant conditioning, we have response first, emitting the response, then was stimulus. RS, the stimulus is the reinforcing stimulus. Okay, we could call it reinforcement. So response, freely emitted reinforcement. Okay, response, freely emitted reinforcement. The same response, reinforcement. Okay, we pair reinforcement with a freely emitted behavior called operant. Then we are likely to condition condition this freely emitted operand so that it will occur more often. All right, and so this is what this is called operant conditioning. It has been used in what behavior modification. Okay, you will what you will see that. Okay, if what those of you who will continue to what to clinical psychology nowadays, what behavior modification is very hot. Okay, all right, extinction. Okay, let's take a look at extinction. What is extinction? Okay, extinction occurs, of course, what you see what the Pavlov's experiment. When the CR, conditioned response, is allowed to occur, but not reinforced. Okay? If what? If the organism is prevented from making the response, extinction would not occur. So extinction occurs when the CR is allowed. The conditioned response is allowed to occur, but not reinforced. For example, the bell, no reinforcement, only the bell, no food. And you use the bell, salivation, no more salivation. Okay, then we have extinction. Okay, however, there's a term you will encounter again in what? In human memory. It's called spontaneous recovery. Okay, spontaneous recovery, right? So that is to say what? Spontaneous recovery of the response will occur. That is to say, you ring the bell, salivation, ring the bell, no more, ring the bell, no more, ring the bell, no more. And then you ring the bell, salivation. This is called what? Spontaneous recovery. Okay, so several extinction spontaneous recovery sequences may be necessary before what? Extinction is complete. Now, what does that mean? Extinction is complete. That means the organism returns to the operant level. All right. So let's take a look at the sequence of events to establish what discrimination. What is discrimination? Okay, discrimination is what is to respond only when a certain stimulus is present. All right, so that is to say, for respond to what to when the light is on, you do this. When the light is off, no matter what you do, nothing. Okay, so therefore the animal learns what to do. Okay, that type of thing. All right. So let's take a look at what. Take a look at what discrimination. Okay, and the sequence of events to establish discrimination. Okay, so discrimination occurs is that what is to what the animal learns to respond only when a certain stimulus is present. Okay, all right. So let's take a look at a sequence of events to establish discrimination. That what? First, the neutral stimulus. Okay, for example, what? A light comes on. Okay, and then what? Then what? You would wait for what? The response, the right response, and then what? Reinforcement. Okay. All right. So here is what? Discrimination is to respond only when a certain stimulus is present. Okay, so the operant that has become associated with the stimulus is called a discriminated operand. Right? For example, remember what in a lot of what Skinner's experiment, the rat pressing the bar to obtain food. Right? Now, let's see the rat press the bar, no food. But when green light comes on, the bar pressing produces food. So the green light now what here? The green light is called what the discriminated what stimulus, or S and then what D. The D is like the square, like the power. Okay, but then it's a superscript. Okay, ST, discriminated stimulus. Now, here the stimulus, okay, for which responding is extinguished is called the stimulus delta. Okay, stimulus with a triangle. Okay, with a triangle. All right. So let's take a look at what. Take a look at the what here. Say green light, bar pressing. Green light comes on, press the bar, food. Okay? But then when the red light comes on, press the bar, no food. Okay? So in this situation here, green light is what? Green light is the discriminated stimulus. Red light is called what? What it's the what? The stimulus what? Stimulus delta that will what? Like extinguish the behavior. That is to say, once they see the red light, the animal won't bother pressing. So the animal has learned discrimination. All right. Now, so stimulus generalization. Light on, bar pressing. Stimulus delta. Light off, no bar pressing. So this is stimulus delta. All right. So take a look at what? Take a look at the stimulus one. Stimulus generalization. Okay. So dim light, bright light, red light, green light, whenever there is light, bar pressing. But no light, no pressing. Okay. So here is what stimulus generalization. Okay. So dim light, press the bar, food. Okay, bright light, press the bar, food, so that the animal learns what whenever there is light, there will be what reinforcement. Okay, there will be reinforcement. All right. Shaping is a very important procedure in behavior modification. So shaping is the technique, or is the technique of reinforcement by successive approximation until the desired response is emitted. Right? It has been used to what? In a lot of textbook, you must have read what? Say shaping is used to cure snake phobia. All right. So, like, okay, say a very famous experiment. So, how to cure snake phobia? Okay, the subject was extremely fearful of snake. Okay, and what the condition of it that not come near the room where the snake is inside. Well, of course, inside the cage. The subject won't even getting near the room. Okay? But then what would reinforcement say with praise or with candy, whatever, okay, that the subject likes, okay? Let's say praise. And very soon the subject will approach the door. And then what? Now, then what? After many days, the subject approaching the door. After several days, no reinforcement. Now, And when the subject touches the doorknob to open the door, then reinforcement. That next time the subject that no reinforcement. And sooner or later here when the subject approaches the cage, reinforcement. That the subject approaches the cage, then no reinforcement. Then the next reinforcement will be the subject open the cage. Okay? And then the next one is the subject would dip the hand into the cage, and then molest the snake, okay, something like this. And then when you print, so that is gradual, that's successive approximation, like gradually, as the desired response is getting more closer to the final, and this is called shaping, all right? So it's the key word is successive approximation, all right? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at another one, conditioned reinforcement. So what is it? A stimulus, I think what we discussed, anyway, let's take a look at stimulus that is not originally reinforcing the bell may become so through repeated presentation with 1/3. That is the sequence of events for establishing conditioned reinforcement. Okay, so now here we have what called conditional reinforcement. Okay, response, neutral stimulus. Okay, a response, say salivation, and then your presentation of a light, a buzzer, or the bell. Okay, then what? You have a reinforcement. When you do this here, after conditioned reinforcement is established, the organism will respond for the neutral stimulus, like the bell, right? So that is one. Respond to the neutral stimulus, response to the bell. This is called conditioned reinforcement. Learned. Conditioned means learn, okay? This is a learned reinforcement. All right. So that is to say, this is the sequence in order to get the neutral stimulus to produce reinforcement. Okay, so that is to say, to get the neutral stimulus to take on some reinforcing property. All right, so that is one. Of course, here in Skinner's jargon, you have response, neutral stimulus, and primary reinforcement. So very soon, the neutral stimulus, like the bell in the Pavlov's experiment, will take on somewhat reinforcing property. Of course, here extinction will occur, right? If you keep on presenting the neutral stimulus without further reinforcement. All right, now take a look at schedules of reinforcement. That is one of the major contributions by Skinner. Right, so there are two schedules, or two types of schedules. Okay, one is called continuous. Okay, one is called continuous. Continuous means what? You present the stimulus, you see the response, you reinforce every time. Okay, every time. Okay, now doing so will quickly establish the SR association, stimulus response association. Okay, very quickly it would do that. Okay, so that's the learning is fast with continuous reinforcement. However, the problem with this is that once you withhold the reinforcement, then what? Then what? You can what? You can break this SR association very quickly. All right. So intermittent reinforcement. So what is intermittent? Well, here is that what we have interval, that time related, your ratio, that is number. After so many responses, okay, then I'll give you reinforcement. So that is ratio, okay. So for time, we have fixed interval, fixed time, variable. Say every on the average, every 5 times, right? Every 5 times, okay? Ratio, what you count the number fixed. Fixed means what? When the operand say every 5 times, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reinforcement. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reinforcement. Then what? You see, the animal learns very quickly. Oh, every 5 times you will give me a food pellet. So therefore what? Then what? The animal will just faster and faster, right? Okay, so that's called a fixed ratio. Every 5 times, okay, variable. Means it is still every 5 times, but then what? This is on the average. So therefore what here? 1, 2, reinforcement. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 reinforcement. And then 1, 2, 3 reinforcement, right? But on the average, throughout, say, a sustained period of time, this is what? A variable ratio of 5. We call it what? VR5, variable ratio 5. Fixed ratio, the FR5, fixed ratio, right? Fixed interval, FI, say FI5, every 5 seconds, okay? Every 5 seconds, a reinforcement. Variable ratio means on the average, it is what? A VI, a variable interval. On the average, if what is it? 5 seconds. Okay, see what? 1 second, 2 second reinforcement. And then what? Then what? After this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 reinforcement. And then 1, 2, 3 reinforcement. Okay, say 3 seconds. Okay, but then overall, on the average, it is what called the VI5. Okay, every 5, not every, but then on the average, it's 5 seconds for reinforcement to be given. Okay, that type of thing. All right. So this is what schedules of reinforcement, right? We have continuous, we have intermittent. All right, so let's take a look at the behavior. Let's take a look at the behavior pattern. Okay, not good. Okay, all right. So you see one more of this here. Now here, take a look at here. The one on the vertical axis is number of responses cumulated. Is that right? So cumulative responses, okay, on all the vertical axis. Now on the horizontal axis, we have time. Okay, we have time. Okay, so that it was 0 minutes. This is 6 minutes. Okay, all right. So let's take a look at the first one. Here is the cumulative record for a fixed interval schedule. All right. So So this is what this looks like a scallop. Is that right? This looks like a scallop. So this is what called the Fi fixed one interval. Right? Right. Look at what here still what these two are fixed interval. This is fixed ratio. Okay, this is time, all right? This is time, and you see that in what fixed ratio, you look at it is like what like a step function, right? So that is to say, response the speed of response is quite steep, all right, quite steep. And then what? Then the animal will rest. And then what? Very steep, a fast response, okay, fast response, okay, very steep. And then the animal will rest. So this is a step function. But compare this with what? With the fixed interval. You see here, the animal what does not stop for long. See here the what the scallop here is a little pause, okay, a little pause, but then what fast one, responsive pause and go on. So that's called a scallop. This one is called what a step function, right? All right. So now take a look at what at this one here. This one here, this is what cumulative record for a variable interval time, okay, variable interval schedule. Right? So variable means what on the average, okay? Well, sometimes it press for a long time, no, and then what? And food come, then food come, and then no food, and then food, then press food. That type of thing is variable, okay? Look at the response, what pattern, steep, okay? Steep. So this one is what variable interval, right? Time. Look at variable ratios, okay? Variable ratio. Look at the curve, the response curve, okay? Steeper, okay? Steeper, all right? Now, you see here, gambling, if you go to Las Vegas, the one-armed machines, the slot machine, all of them, they are programmed using what? Using VR variable ratio, okay? Using variable ratio. So what? If you happen to see that someone working with that one-armed bandit, and the woman hit the jackpot, should you go there? It is highly unlikely that the jackpot will come very close to that. Well, but in a variable ratio, it may happen, right? It may happen. But the likelihood is that the VR ratio is pretty large for jackpot, but then for how should I say? For say, you put a quarter in, two quarters come out. You put a quarter in, 4 quarters come out, and what? They program the machine with different VR for different reinforcement. Okay, so you put a quarter in, you get 2 quarters out. The VR must be quite frequent. Is that right? Say a small value. But the jackpot must be a big value, say 10,000 times, then you will have a jackpot on a variable ratio, that type of thing. All right. So that is what schedule of reinforcement. All right. So, but then let's take a look at here. Take a look at the written one. Take a look at this here. Okay. Take a look at this here. All right. Now, but then let me summarize here is that responses that are reinforced periodically rather than each time they are emitted, they tend to be conditioned more strongly. Is that right? all those variable ratio, variable interval, okay, and therefore are more difficult to extinguish. Right? Now, say, let's give you an example in the classroom situation. Let's say every time your student pays attention in the class, you squeeze or punch the tiny cheek a little bit. Okay, a show of approval. After a while, your student just takes it for granted, and you have to resort to other, perhaps stronger reinforcement, so that they'll pay attention to you, right? So that is to say continuous reinforcement, okay, continuous reinforcement. That is to say this is called reinforcement each time the operand is emitted. Say, listen to you carefully. All right, that type of thing. Okay. Now, it is continuous reinforcement schedule. It is very useful, extremely useful for acquiring new behavior. However, because it is an easy come, easy go, right? The saying, extinction can occur rather rapidly. For example, a cookie, every time your child sits down and does its homework, okay? Once you run out of cookie, right? You know what I mean, right? So take a look at fixed ratio, okay? Take a look at fixed ratio. FR, reinforcement occurs only after a fixed number of operands have been emitted. Example, and a good example is other than this here is laborers who are paid on a piecework basis. Right? So in a lot of assembly line, after you have done 5 of this, you get paid so much. You finished 5 of this, you paid so much. Okay, that is fixed ratio. All right, fixed interval. Okay, fixed interval. Reinforcement occurs only after a fixed time only after a fixed time interval. Okay, workers paid by the week. Okay, now worker paid by the week. That is a fixed interval. Okay, now here you see that response rate increases as time for reinforcement approaches, then drops after reinforcement. All right, you see the rest. Okay, you see that the rest. Okay, all right. Now, let's take a look at variable ratio. Okay, variable ratio. Reinforcement. Let's take a look at variable interval. Okay, variable interval VI. Okay, variable interval. Okay, variable interval. The time period rather than number of responses are varied. All right, so that is interval relates to time. Okay, take a look at variable ratio. Reinforcement is based on the number of responses being emitted. However, remember the ratio is constantly being varied so that the organism never knows which response will be reinforced. Now, remember I mentioned the one-armed bandit. Okay, for example, the 40th time, after 40 times reinforcement, after 196 times reinforcement, then after 1 time reinforcement, then after 6 times reinforcement, then after 2001 reinforcement. So that is so the one-armed bandit in Las Vegas works on this principle. So therefore, any operands, one under the VR schedule of reinforcement is highly resistant to extinction, and people can become addicted to the responses. So that is one of the basic ingredients in gambling, okay, in getting people addicted in gambling. All right. So here you take a look at all those response pattern and the reaction when reinforcement stops. Okay. So this is just an example, more example to show you. Okay. So that schedule of reinforcement is one of the major contributions by Skinner. Okay. Okay. Operant conditioning in the classroom. Take a look at this here. Okay. Now, in school, reinforcement are often too distant. You see, a lot of time you need to pass 4 exams beautifully in order to get a good grade for the course, for assignments for this course. All right. Now, even if you do so, okay, after, let's say you wait 4 years to get your degree, it does not guarantee you a rich income or a nice job. Is that right? After you graduate. Well, since we know operant conditioning is most effective when the reinforcement is immediate, Skinner strongly favors the use of teaching machine. For example, computer-assisted instruction, computer-assisted learning, computer-assisted testing, that type of thing. Okay, so Skinner strongly favors the use of this machine or use of these programs because because they can provide immediate reinforcement. Okay, so you see here in computer-assisted instruction, every time you get the answer correct, the computer will say bravo. Nowadays even with sound clapping of hands. Okay, so good teaching is that the ability to arrange the proper sequence of reinforcements and to make sure that these reinforcements are contingent upon students meeting the appropriate responses. All right, but then you take a look at this all in red here. Teachers tend to lose no time to squelch any non-conforming behaviors. All right, that's true. That right, non-conforming behaviors. However, how often do they reinforce or praise good behavior? Okay, something like, wow, you have been paying attention for the past 5 or 15 minutes. Excellent, keep it going. You seldom see this, is that right? You will see that any minute misbehavior, the teacher says, stop this, okay, stop that, okay, that type of thing. No. So this is making the classroom, you're just inducing kind of negativity inside the classroom, negative atmosphere, is that right? Now, there's another ways you could shift to called accentuate the positive. You praise appropriate behaviors. Okay, you find opportunities to praise the students. So that is called accentuate the positive, right? So that is a good thing to learn. All right, let's take a look at what behaviorism's three underlying principles. Okay, now let's say what John Locke, psychologist, would like to quote him, say a British philosopher back in 1690. He said what? He put forward what tabula rasa. What is it? The mind is the blank slate upon which experience writes. Okay? Behaviorists paid one little attention to internal cognitive structures, internal cognitive map, or even less to what genetic predisposition. All right. So this is one of the underlying principles. All right. Look at the second. There are the second one. There are few important differences in learning and conditioning styles across species. For example, even Skinner believe that the understanding of rat and pigeon behaviors could be easily extrapolated to the human condition. So that is to say, they espoused the following: how animal learns, could be extrapolated to how human learns. Okay, so that the kind of thing. So therefore, in larger universities, there's a course in psychology department called comparative psychology. Okay, so that is exactly this here. Okay, like compare what human learning with what animal learning, that type of thing. So that's comparative psychology. Anyway, the last one, learning is seen as occurring in an automatic fashion. That is what Piaget called P-learning. Okay, it is very passive, is that right? And the learner was typically seen as the passive recipient of environmental stimuli, not a selector of stimuli. So we are just passive learners, right? So that's what behaviorism's three underlying principles. Now, what are the problems? Okay, what are the problems? Okay, here there are lots of problems. Okay, the first one is called species specificity. Now, what is that? Species specificity. Pigeons and the lighted keys. The pigeons, a lot of Skinner's experiments is Skinner packing on the key. The key is usually lighted. And this is an actually biologically predisposed response, is that right? The pigeon like to pack at things here. Okay. Now, the rats in the rat pressing the bar, is that right? Instead of cats in the Skinner box. Cats, for example, what is happening is that rats, when a rat is hungry, the rat increases its activity, is that right? By pressing like crazy. But then if you put cats inside the Skinner box, the hungrier the cat is, okay, the more docile, if I use the word, the more more the cat won't move, because that's genetically built in the cat. The cat is a good ambush the rat. Okay, the cat will remain motionless. Is that right? So if you put cat in the Skinner box, you observe nothing. The cat won't press the bar when the cat is hungry. Okay? But rat, completely different. Now, then we have one, the bar one, all the bars, okay, inside what the Skinner box, okay, inside the Skinner box, they are all made of metal, not plastic. Okay, you ask Peter, how do you know? Well, when I was doing my master, I worked in a lab. Okay, inside was a lab with a huge arena. What do you call the Skinner box? But it's a huge arena. Okay, like a huge classroom. Okay, with lots of racks, with bars everywhere. But then the bars, of course, connected to a counter, that type of thing. Okay, and if what if the lever, we call it bar press, the bar, if the bar is made of plastic, the hungry rack will eat the plastic instead of pressing, will simply eat it. Okay, so biological evolution has taught us what is important to learn. Okay, for example, both mother-infant attachment and the incest taboo are biologically predisposed to learning. Is that right? Right, the biological. Say, you don't have to teach women how to be mother. Okay, the motherhood instinct is already one. That instinct is etched in our DNA, in the women's DNA. Okay, that type of thing. Okay, so the a lot of time here we are saying that the behaviors or Skinners, okay, for example, has been lucky. Okay, here species specificity. They chose the right animals, and then the right environment. All right, all right. Instinctive drift. What is instinctive drift here? Many of the artificial conditioning routines, okay, produced so easily in the laboratory. In the laboratory will soon drift back toward the organism's natural behavioral repertoire. Okay? Now take a look at the cartoon. Okay, take a look at the cartoon. All right. So that is I found it. Okay, it is a very appropriate one. Is all right. It's very good. All right. So Skinner has Skinner has been most severely criticized for discounting thought, feeling, and other phenomena that exist in the head and therefore cannot be directly observed. Is that right? He just applied, remember, what we call reductionism to the extreme. Okay, no feeling, no thought, no cognitive map. Okay, no setting, no personality, that type of thing. Right. So that is that is not good. Is that right? And also take a look at Skinner's view of language development. Okay, he published verbal behavior in 1957, only to be refuted by Chomsky 2 years later. All right, so he actually Skinner, after the publication by Chomsky, after Chomsky established the innate language acquisition mechanism in all human, Skinner stopped talking about language acquisition, right? Sensation and perception. By his own admission, Skinner's behaviorism cannot account for the process by which we take in information through our senses and give meaning to it. Okay, Skinner admitted, right? And also here Skinner espoused p-learning versus LM logical mathematical, because Skinner's theory cannot explain LM learning. Skinner cannot do that. Okay, Skinner cannot do that. All right. I think I'll stop here and I'll continue later on. Okay. Thank you.